Eleanor, welcome to Alive and Well. So good to have you with us this morning.
It's an honor to be here.
So cool. All right, you guys, in the show notes below, I'm going to link Eleanor's show. We actually are doing like a swap. So we just had this awesome conversation on her podcast. So go check it out and listen and learn from her and all the things. But I'm so excited for you guys to hear from her. Eleanor, you teach women, people, about growing their businesses in a way that's not only profitable, but that's sustainable, right? And I think that is so needed. And I would just love to hear maybe a little bit about like, was there a turning point for you, even professionally, where you're like, man, I'm doing all the things and I'm seeing that this might not be as sustainable as I once thought it was, or I'm starting to notice like gaps or holes, or I'm losing like the fire that I once had for this, where you just kind of like pivoted or started to reevaluate the ways in which you were operating, that leads to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I was leading a coaching business. So I started off with a consulting advisory firm and then transitioned into coaching. And so I'm building this coaching business, working primarily with women leaders and women entrepreneurs. And I am bringing in great clients. I'm growing my brand. I'm growing my email list. All of that is working great.
Mm-hmm.
And what I start to notice is that after a few years of really steady growth, my revenue started to plateau.
Okay.
And I was curious about that because I actually had quite a few leads. A lot of things were working very well. And what I realized is that when people would express interest in working with me, I would procrastinate on getting back to them. I would not really be that jazzed about closing the sale.
Yeah.
And that procrastination revealed to me that the idea of taking on more clients and working with more clients was actually quite painful.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually want to take on things that made me feel even more uncomfortable or even more in pain.
Yeah.
And as I started to really look into it, what I realized was that I was continuing to behave like a producer in my business. And when we look at the pathway of the development of women entrepreneurs, they go through three very clear sort of milestones of development, moving from a producer to a replicator to a multiplier.
Okay.
And so producers, like when you are the business, you're producing the work. And I was very comfortable there. And that's how I was behaving. I was doing all the things. I had complete control over it, or as we chuckled about earlier, the illusion of control over everything. But in order to be able to take on more clients, to have more impact, I had to fundamentally shift how I saw myself and how I created value in my company by moving from being that producer to being a replicator. And when you make that move, it's like you start to learn, how do I start to become an architect of systems?
Good.
To be able to take the same type of transformation that I'm able to generate personally, and how can I create repeatable results by training and mentoring other people, by creating frameworks and tools and systems. And so I fundamentally had to shift my own identity. And that's when I started to see that identity change piece of it, and also the sort of function change in your role, we weren't talking about it enough. And what I know about working with women is that transparency is extremely important. Women are not conditioned to walk into dark alleys. Like my husband and I, there's a dog walking reservoir close to where we live. And he'll go there at night. Over my dead body would I step foot in there at night. Never. We have to see, the path has to be illuminated. That's the number one thing I've learned about working with women. Illuminate the path so she can decide. So that's when I was like, Eureka, I see it. I'm going to illuminate this path so that other women can see themselves and they get to make the choice. Do I want to go down this path and scale, or would I prefer to optimize where I'm at? And there's tons of great things there. That was my moment.
Wow, that's so fast. Okay, there's so much in that I want to unpack. I'm like furiously writing notes as she's speaking. First, I just want to acknowledge, and I'm so grateful you brought this up, that tension that you felt when you noticed you were procrastinating. And I've definitely been there too, where it's like, man, like, an inquiry will come through and it takes me 2 weeks to get back to it. I'm like, that's always a red flag to me, right? That like there's something going on there. I'm not jumping on it. And I feel it, like I felt it in the workspace. But I can just imagine women at home listening, that have felt that in other spaces too. It's like, I want to have more kids, but then I also like feel this tension of like, we don't want to expand our family. We're just finally in a good groove, or, however that looks. So I think that's just a really real thing. And I think what's so awesome is that you just got curious about it, right? What does that mean? What needs to change here? What is that signaling? And I think that's so powerful. I want to talk about this idea of shifting your identity. Can you talk about that a little further? Because I love this idea that we start as a producer and then we have to become a replicator and then we have to become a multiplier for things to scale, or a business to scale. But that does require, it's not only like a label, right? It requires us to see ourselves and our role so differently.
As a producer, you get to get in there and work directly with your clients. All the wins are yours. Like you may have other people who are supporting you, but when a client expresses gratitude for the impact that you have had in their life, or the impact that your work together has had in their life,
Yeah.
there's a real direct connection between you and that impact. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's intoxicating, the direct experience of impact. When you move to become a replicator and you start to train other people in what you do, you codify and become sort of a student of your own work and start to figure out what are the steps and how could I lay those steps bare for others to see and walk themselves, and how could I train other people to guide people through these steps?
Yeah.
Once that starts to happen, you are the person behind the person who's having direct connection and impact with customers and clients.
Yeah.
And I remember when that first started to happen, and when our clients would start to thank my team, I would be relieved. I would experience a sense of relief, like, phew, it worked. That would be one feeling,
Yeah, sure.
And very close on the heels of that would be a sense of worry, sometimes even like jealousy.
Yeah.
That, wow, they thanked that person, but really it was me. Like I was the one who created this. I'm over here. Don't forget about me. And it's incredibly embarrassing to share
so
this
real.
out loud, but it's right. That's what happened.
Yes.
And and then immediately on the heels of that, I just shut it down. I didn't ever, there was a period where I did not give myself a space to process that feeling, because I thought it was so undignified. I thought it was so unleaderly. I was embarrassed of having that feeling. And so I continued to show up in my bigger business with this identity that was too small or not mature enough for what I had created.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I really started being present to my emotion, seeing, hey, this is not the woman today who's feeling this. This is a much younger version of myself. And I really have to be able to integrate the part of me that feels that way into my current reality.
So good.
That's where the identity change really comes in.
That's so powerful. And I'm curious, I think for all of us, we can think back to different points in our life where something happened, or we made a decision where it required us to have a shift in identity in order to be able to meet, right, the new challenge before us or the new role. I wonder what are some of the things that you had to trust in order to do that?
I needed to trust my systems.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was the easiest step for me, because it was something that I'd created. So I had to trust my systems that was like the first thing. And that's one of the easiest things because they tend to be process oriented. They tend to be black and white. You can point to them, even if you're pointing to like a flow chart,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Yeah. So like trusting my systems, and closely related to that is trusting your intellectual property.
Ooh, okay.
So, right. So you go from trusting your own labor
Mm-hmm.
to placing trust in the assets that you've created, the
Yeah.
intellectual property assets you've created. So that is like the first layer of trust.
Okay. And then I was gonna say, and then
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. And then the next layer of trust is trusting your team.
Yeah. Yep.
And and there's 3 levels of trust to that actually map onto 3 different levels of delegation. So
Okay.
the first way that you begin to trust your team is by trusting that they'll follow the processes that you have laid out.
Okay.
That requires that you still create the processes to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's
Yep.
like a good first step for those of us who are type A. I was going to say control freaks, you know what I mean? But like type
Yeah.
A people who have a way of doing things, and that's where we
Yes.
started.
Particular. Yep.
Yeah. And then you have to trust as you start to build, as they start to build familiarity with your company and the way that you do things. And by the way, this also is going to really be applicable to people who are just managing teams. You don't have to have your own business for this.
Yeah.
Or it could even be in your family.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
Right. So the next part is trusting people to create processes.
Okay.
Right. And then the third level of trust is the biggest transformation, which is where you start to trust people to deliver results. So you paint a picture of what success looks like. You're clear about what you want, and your job becomes allowing them to figure out the how and execute on the how with you as guide and mentor. So each step of this, you are really elevating as a leader.
Yeah.
You're really creating space. And I think that leads to the third level of trust, which is really trusting the structure and the container and like the world that you build.
Yeah. So I wondered too about even like trusting your pace. Like I would imagine there's a certain level of like having to wear blinders and not seeing right how everyone else is doing and the pace with which they're building and running and operating and growing, and a level of even like trusting the timing and trusting, your ability to like hold all of that as you're growing and scaling. But can you speak specifically to like trusting your pace? Because I think there's so much urgency, and like that's almost like an additional weight that so many of us carry who are entrepreneurs or leading big teams, is like it's not happening fast enough. And I wonder how detrimental that actually is to our growth.
I can remember hearing a quote, which is the amateur is always in a rush. The master never hurries.
Ooh, that's so good. Yeah.
And I remember growing up playing squash with my mom. My mom was an excellent squash player. And when I first started learning how to play squash, I was like an amoeba out there on the court. I was flailing. I was very athletic and flailing all over the place.
Yeah.
My mom would beat me brutally every time simply by understanding how to where she needed to be, and a gentle step over here and a gentle step over there. She was the master and I was the amateur. And that's where I really saw these quick, jerky need for speed, urgency versus
so good.
More of a controlled pace.
Love that.
Right. I think there's so much looking side to side in entrepreneurship, which is massively unhelpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really distracts people from what they need to do. I will say in my own journey, and this is fairly true of many entrepreneurs that I know, there is a fundamental element where you need to be able to get it done.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to get it done. And you also have to ship fast enough that you're able to get feedback from your marketplace fairly quickly. So there's a huge component of the entrepreneurial spirit, which is about iteration and experimentation.
Yeah.
So there is a lightness of foot that is required in order to do that.
It's good.
As you start to bring in other people, you need to be able to slow yourself down because now you're not running the experiments, you're guiding others to run experiments. You have to be patient with their learning curve. You
Yeah.
have to understand that it's about not just moving one person, it's about moving
Yeah.
a team of people to a result.
Wow.
So there's like a slowing down. And then at a certain evolution of business, I can remember I got to a point where my thing, it's always like, what do you not want to do? I was finding that I didn't want to be on any team meetings. And I have a wonderful team, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't understand it because I really like all these people, but when I see the meetings, I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And what I realized was that now it was time. We'd slowed down. We got everybody on board. And now it was time to make sure that the company was again expressing who we were and living out the vision that I'd always had for it. And I had to start increasing the pace. And because my team, they could take it, I needed to start challenging.
Wow.
And, and inspiring. So I think pacing is interesting. There's never just one pace. It's like anybody who does like a long race, or even like a 3,000 meter or a 1,500 meter, pacing is very important and it's quite strategic.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to hear too, like as it comes to pacing or even your systems, how women do it differently or how we should do it differently or how we have to do it differently, because I think all of those things are true. And I think so often we're just like put in a culture sometimes, or we've experienced a culture led by men that's very, all the things, right? And it's like, but hey, you actually, one, you don't even have a biology that's similar to mine, right? Our wiring is very different. And just the reality of, I think, especially a woman who's also raising kids, there's just things I think that I would assume, or at least in my experience, have to be in place systems wise and pacing wise, that are just strategic.
Dr. Claudia Goldin, she's a Harvard economics professor, and she's actually the first solo winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics by a woman, the first woman solo winner of the Nobel Prize. And I love her so much. She was a guest on my podcast. Interesting human. Her work centers on women and work, and particularly career and family for women. So as an example, what her findings, and she's run some of the most important like longitudinal studies of women and work and the gender pay gap. And what she identified was that the gender pay gap actually exists primarily in heterosexual relationships where a man and woman are married and they make the decision to have a family. And at that point, they have to make a decision who has the flexible job and who has the greedy job. So greedy jobs are time inflexible generally. And flexible jobs, and they pay more.
Yeah.
And flexible jobs, there's more flex for time, and they generally don't pay as much.
Oh, yeah.
And in general, dad takes the greedy job and mom takes the flexible job. And they do this very rationally for the well-being of their family. But that is actually the primary driver of the gender wage gap. And what's interesting is most of the people who complain about it most vigorously uphold it.
Yeah.
For very rational reasons.
Sure.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So her area of work that she talked about now is really looking at, like, there's a big period where many women may take a slight step back in their overall earning power because of this dynamic. And it's coming through choices that they are making in their homes very rationally, for the overall good of their family and the overall good of their collective financial well-being. But what happens with women over the long period? So as their kids get older, what happens with their career? So, I was saying my kids are 19 and 15. My youngest is in South Korea for 2 weeks. My oldest he's heading off to university and he works and he's a full-time athlete. So we don't see him much. I have so much time to work if I want to. Yeah. So much energy. The sort of, being a mom is meaningful, and there's a huge tediousness to being a parent. Yeah. First, you have to change their diaper, and then you have to put them in their car seat, and then you have to take their car seat out to the car, and then you have to strap it in. Like hours of work, no matter how
sleep.
Right? Totally.
Yeah.
So I guess the reason that I'm saying this is one of the things that I think can be very important for women, especially because our brains are wired to be fairly holistic in nature,
Yeah.
is to start looking at our careers in terms of decades
Oh, I love that.
rather
Yeah. Zoom
than,
it out a bit.
short. Yeah,
Yeah.
just give yourself some space and time. And this doesn't mean selling yourself short. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean not taking risks, but it means, being even more strategic so that we can truly own the phases that we're in and we can own the power of the decisions that we're making at any one time.
Oh, I think that's so helpful. Actually brought me back to this question I haven't asked myself that in a while, but especially when my kids were younger. Now they're 7 and 8, but when they were really little, like almost daily, I was asking myself, I'm like, how skewed is my perception right now? I like, there's a
I
part of
remember
me
those
that
days.
knew it was super skewed, and like I thought things were more important than they actually were, or like, I thought it would never happen when I actually knew it would. And like I had to stop and ask myself, like, how skewed is my perception right now? And then just like recenter. But I love that idea of zooming out, because I think it brings both an urgency and a clarity on like what's the focus of this if it's 10 years, and understanding that, like, God willing, right, this is what the next season might bring, and I don't actually have to like do it all right now for this invisible deadline I've set for myself.
Yeah.
That's so good. As you're talking about even like pacing, the way women have to do things differently, the systems that you have in place, I'm so curious about, as you've gone through these iterations of your identity as the leader and these moments of growth and expansion, what are some of the systems that you've had for yourself, like personally, and then maybe professionally, that have really helped you to increase your capacity? Because this hasn't been a flash in the pan. Like, you've been doing this sustainably. You teach women how to do it. So for the woman who's listening, who's like, awesome, I know I'm there to grow. Like, I'm thinking I have a one-on-one client right now who owns a chiropractic practice, and she's ready, right? And like,
Yeah.
she's like, man, I'm just ready for what's next. Like, I want to stop doing adjustments. I want to actually like grow this thing and hire other doctors. And I feel tapped though. Like, my kids
Yeah.
are young, and like I don't see how I find the space mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually in my calendar to like do this. Talk to me like practically where someone like that can start to focus their time.
Yeah. So the mantra is subtract to multiply.
Ooh, yeah. Not to add,
Yeah.
to multiply.
No,
Not,
yeah.
yeah.
Subtract to multiply. Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that growth is about adding,
Yep.
but it's actually about first subtracting, then multiplying in that specific order.
Okay. Tell me.
So, yeah. So the first thing is, when we talk about subtract, what you really need to do is to take a look at your business and analyze what are the few things, it could be the few types of customers or the few offers that are actually driving the lion's share of our revenue.
Okay. Yeah.
That's thing number one, like really auditing so that it gives us the power of perspective. Otherwise, it's very tempting to treat all of our customers and treat all of our offerings as equal. And
Yeah.
inherently, all people are equal. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But inside a business, there you will find that there are generally cohorts or types of customers or types of buyers that are actually driving significantly more revenue than others.
Yeah.
As you grow, what you start to see is that simplicity scales, complexity fails. So the first thing that we need
Yep.
to do is really identify, what are the big drivers in our business? Ooh, this is interesting. This type of thing that we sell actually drives a lot of revenue. This not so
Mhm.
much. This type of customer actually drives a lot of our revenue. This not so much. So you need to identify the big drivers in your business,
It's good.
and you can and you start to focus on them. So it doesn't mean you have to cut everything. That can feel like an amputation. It just means that you can allow those, if you just allow those to be as they are. Don't worry too much about them. Your main focus is on your core profit drivers. So that's really sort of subtract.
Okay.
From there, now with those few things, now you need to start to create systems and like codify. So it could be creating intellectual property and frameworks. I know that you did that, as part of your coaching, to start to, hey, is there a process or framework we're consistently using here? And generally there is,
Yeah.
so start to create frameworks, and then to start to just take a look at how it's getting done and almost build like a step-by-step checklist.
So good. Yeah.
Right. So these frameworks, so this is where you start to design systems.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I will say. The biggest challenge that I see entrepreneurs go through is not wanting to embrace the patience, the
Yeah.
learning curve required to become a system designer. It will feel like you're starting a new business,
Right.
and you really have to talk to yourself that this is a very important function. Sometimes people will want other people to come in and do it. And sometimes they can, but I would work with AI.
Yeah. I was just
I would be
thinking that. I was going to
yeah,
ask you practically the
yeah,
tools.
totally.
Yeah.
I would you roll. You are, a world-class system designer. Context. I have this practice. I'm trying to scale it. Here's our most lucrative service. Interview me to
Yeah.
help me create a system that I can teach other people for how this service is delivered step by step.
So
You
good.
can
Yep.
really be working. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think doing that. And then finally, once you've created the systems, then the next piece is to fundamentally renegotiate your value to the company as being a developer of people. So the
Yeah.
skill of working through people is one of the most powerful skills a leader can have. It's a meta skill. It
Mm-hmm.
combines listening, it combines giving feedback,
Yeah.
providing clear direction, creating a vision, incentivizing and motivating, And so I think that
Yeah.
piece and just having patience with yourself that
Really
that
good.
will be a multi-year journey of developing that type of skill set.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's so helpful. And I think there's so many pieces in that you can start regardless of where you're at on this journey professionally,
Yeah.
right? To as your next step. On the personal side, what are some of the things for you that are non-negotiable that just help you be able to hold all of this?
Yeah.
Right? Like talk to me about
Oh,
that a little bit.
totally. Okay. So there's a few things, and I know that we share a love of this. So one is movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's things like walking, but it was during the pandemic, actually. I was listening to a podcast that was all about hobbies and the connection between hobbies and true rejuvenation.
Yes.
And what the research found is that often for a hobby to truly rejuvenate you, it needs to match the stimulation level of the work that you do. I have no idea why.
Wow. So
So,
like professionally, the work that you do, if it's like high, right? Like high stimulation, then your
yes.
hobby should also match that or
Yes,
vice versa.
that's what there's yeah. So and which explained
Interesting.
why I always wanted to be the kind of person who could sit down and knit, but I just could
There's
not
no
be.
chance.
There's no chance. So for instance, like so
Oh,
that's why I play soccer. I
yeah.
have a soccer team, we compete. It's a recreational league, but like we're trying to win.
Come on.
And I find that having things like that,
Yeah.
I lift weights and I'm always trying to like hit new personal records in terms of strength. That creates a level of stimulation that absorbs me and
Yeah.
is in a completely different way from the work that I do as a leader.
Awesome.
And that once that's happened, then I can chill.
Yeah. Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's like one major habit. Another habit is really cultivating friendships and
That's
investing
really good
time in
too. Yeah.
friendships. There's a period of time for me when my kids were growing, I was running my business. I really neglected my friendships. I
Yeah.
just didn't invest the time. I felt like I didn't have it. And, I don't know that I was wrong. It was the
Yep.
choice that I made at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, I have in the last few years invested much more time in friendships and have really found that it's just so rich and nurturing, enabling me to hold all the things that I do and all the people I'm responsible to
Yeah.
in a way that feels light and joyful.
Yes. Wow. That's so good. And there's so much there too that like is rooted in your nervous system that I'm hearing, right? It's like the social
Sure.
connection and even like the having the active hobby and then actually being able, like once you have that released, right? Then actually your nervous system feeling safe enough to settle and being able to actually like recharge and relax and unwind in that order, I think is so awesome. So thanks for sharing all that. And you guys heard it, like she's doing so much. Like, and I can only imagine what your calendar looks like, and you're making time for your friends and you're making time to move your body and have fun. And I think that's so like, I think that needs to be screamed from, like when we talk about a life of both, and I think we're so quick to neglect. Like I coach so many women that when I talk to them about play and how fundamental it is to our growth, they just look at me with this like deer in the headlights. And it's not because they don't get it. They're just like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've like done something just for me that actually lights me up and brings me joy. So just like the opportunity to rediscover that and really lean into it, I think is such a good business strategy.
Well, it is. And, so this is interesting. I have played. So for me, I'm a sports person. And so that has been my outlet for play.
Yeah.
And I've played consistently.
Yeah.
And the reason that I've done it is because my mom did. So my mom played squash. Yeah. My mom went to the gym. She would take me. I would have to sit for hours watching her play squash. But it was very clear. She set a very clear example. This is non-negotiable and important.
Yeah.
And so I think, so I share that because we know that the research is that women are much more likely to do uncomfortable things when they understand it's going to help other people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, right. So we could spend a lot of time telling you you're worth it and go do it. You're a smart woman. You know that, you know, or we could tell you the truth, which is that by doing it, you create a generational impact by fundamentally at a root level.
Yes.
The young people around you will understand. It'll be second nature. So I think this is really key because it's in my DNA. I've always played. Now, some types of play, like, other types of play that are not sports related, I'm not as strong there. But just putting it out there that people, little people are watching.
Yeah, they are. And like the inverse is also true, right? Like if we're too busy to do those things, we're also sending a message and teaching something there also. Wow, so fascinating. So good. I was going to end and I guess I still will, but I feel like we kind of just covered it. I love to hear what it looks for you or what it means for you to live and lead and work alive and well in this season in your life. So when you just kind of think of that, like what comes to mind? What are you doing these days that helps you show up alive and well?
Ooh. So for me, what it means, like the measure for me is about expression. So it's like, am I fully expressing what's inside me? That is it's really key. That's when I feel deeply satisfied. That's when I feel successful. That's when I feel very connected.
Wow.
So for me, it is the ability to travel, to the ability to create my schedule in a way that prioritizes being in a high vibe state.
Yes.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best.
No, that's
when I think about, being in a high vibe state, like how can actually that be my main job? One of my main habits, looking at my actual calendar and gently, I don't have to be in a rush, but gently starting to re-engineer it such that the majority of what I do, I'm in a high vibe state. And when I'm taking on something that is genuinely difficult for me to do, that drains me, because sometimes I would argue that sometimes it's this is life.
Yes.
It's not fantasy that's going to happen. That is the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intention versus just operating in the defaults, right? And how you choose. Wow. That's so good. Thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing just to pioneer among women entrepreneurs and just presenting this way, the sustainable way of growing. And I think for so many of us, our business is a form of self-expression. Like there's just so much within us that's wanting to come forth, and being one of those illuminators of the path is such big work. So just thanks for your courage and the space that you're filling and the women you're leading. For those who are listening, who are they're running the things and they have the companies and the teams and want to continue learning from you, this is your bread and butter. Where can they connect, or what's a good next step for them?
So the best place is the podcast. It's called Woman Owned. The amazing Michelle is a guest on the show. I speak to fantastic women founders, just really talking about how they do it and what they do. I really believe you have to see it to be it,
Yeah.
So the Women Owned podcast. And you can check out our resources, our scaling tools at saffymedia.co.
Perfect. We'll link all of that for you guys in the show notes, easy access. But just thanks again. Thanks for making the time to be with us and pouring out your wisdom. I was like listening in real time and taking all of these notes. I have a full pad here, but I'm going to come back and this is going to be one I'm going to listen to again. So again, thanks again for being with us.
Such a pleasure.